Remember, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Caesar's Palace on the Vegas Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada, it's another exciting edition of the BengeBuster Show. All right, everyone, welcome to the BengeBuster Show. It has been quite a minute since we have done a show, and right now we are, I am coming to you right here from my hotel room in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am still on vacation, soaking up, well, I would say soaking up some sun, but it's more or less wind out here. It's been a pretty crazy time. I've been out here now for a little bit over a week and just enjoying myself, and I'm excited. But without any further ado, I want to bring on my co-hosts, co-conspirators, and friends, Chris and Jeff. What is going on, guys?
Man, Tony, so great to be back with you and Jeff. I know it's been a few weeks, and hey, I know you've been on the Las Vegas Strip. I've been seeing black $100 chips in your hands and maybe a $500 chip here and there, and I know you're hanging out with the high rollers.
Man, I tell you, it has been a crazy trip so far, and a very exciting trip. Man, you know, I've been out west a few times, you know, out to LA and stuff like that, but never to Vegas. So a few months ago, I had decided to plan a trip to Vegas, and lo and behold, here we are. And man, it's been so much fun. We left Charlotte last Thursday morning and flew into Dallas, and I got to tell you guys about this trip. So you know, by flying to Dallas, I got about a 2-hour layover in Dallas, so I decided to leave my wife and with our friends at one of the restaurants, and I just started walking through the airport in hopes of you know, maybe running into a Von Erich or, you know, somebody like that. But unfortunately, the only thing I found in the airport were a bunch of people wearing masks, and I did find the Dallas Cowboys for my good friend George South. I did find the Dallas Cowboys souvenir store, and I went there and, you know, took a look around, and I picked up a couple gimmicks while I was in there, and but then the plane ride from Dallas to Vegas was something else. I had this lady sitting behind me, guys. She was mad at the world and mad at her boyfriend, and because he wasn't giving her attention, and she let the whole airplane know. And of course, my wife, being from Boston, she told her a couple times to shut up, and I thought for a second she would get booted off the plane, but I guess the stewardess were a little bit lenient for that. So anyway, but I finally made it to Vegas about 4 p.m. that day. It was like a 10-hour trip to get there from a couple layovers. But once I got there, we got checked into the hotel, and man, I hit the strip wide open, and man, you talk about good people watching. Vegas right now is good people watching, because there are some different people out there. Let me tell you that right now. But I'll get more into my trip. I want to talk to you guys. What's been going on with you guys? I know it's been a minute since we've had a podcast due to me being sick and me having a bout with kidney stones a few weeks back. So it's been about 3 weeks since we've had our podcast. I'm glad to be back. Jeff, I'll start with you, man. What's been going on with you in the Western North Carolina area?
Oh, not very much of anything. Just a lot of rain. I don't know, man. I was thinking about singing Viva Las Vegas to you, but I figured, no, you don't want to run off the listeners. But not much of anything, man. Just chilling and working and taking care of kids. That's about it, man. Watching it rain.
Yep, that's about what's been going on. Chris, what about you, man?
I know, Tony, it's been a few weeks. I mean, gosh, a lot has happened. I mean, what can we say? What, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, and Michael McDowell won the Daytona 500, and had Valentine's Day roll by. It just seems like the days are just rolling by here. And God, and another week, February's in the books. It's just like, wow. I really think 2021 is going to just kind of fly by. I mean, it might just be me. I don't know, but it seems like we're just off and running.
No, I feel the same way. It seems like just yesterday, it was New Year's Day, and here we are. Like you said, we got one more week left in February, and then we got March coming up, March Madness, and of course, yours truly's birthday is in the month of March. So any listeners out there want to send me a birthday gift, just message the Facebook page, and I'll give you my PayPal address. No, I'm joking. But yeah, March is my birthday month. I'm excited about it, and of course you guys know I like to travel, so I've got another. I haven't got home yet from Vegas, and my wife has already planned another trip. So we are going south. In April, we're going to take the kids to see the Mickey Mouse, and I'm not letting this pandemic slow me down, man. I'm still going to enjoy life and live it to the fullest. And speaking of living it to the fullest, so I got to tell you guys what I'd done a couple of days ago. So I decided to rent a slingshot, and some of you listeners at home that maybe not know what a slingshot is, it's like a crossover between a car and a motorcycle. It's made by the company Polaris, and those things are extremely fun. They're 5-speed manual, and Jeff and Chris, let me tell you, those things are fast. And the way they're made, guys, is like on the front you got 2 wheels on the front, and on the back you got 1 wheel, and of course the vehicles are rear wheel drive. And when I picked the thing up, the guy told me, he says, now be careful because that back wheel will get loose on you. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Now I drive a Camaro, and I'm thinking, I park them tires about every day. So let me try and see what this thing can do. Guys, I was coming into the parking deck of the hotel where we're staying, and I hit first and popped it into second, and I thought I was going to hit the wall. I said, "Oh, I probably should have got that extended insurance plan." But anyway, we rented this slingshot, and we drove it out. It was me and my wife and 2 other couples, and we all 3 had slingshots. We like the slingshot motorcycle gang. But we drove those things out to the Grand Canyon, which is about a 2.5-hour ride from Las Vegas through the desert. Legitimately, for years I've always pictured what the desert looks like, and all I could picture was it's going to be just like Chevy Chase on National Lampoon's Vacation, but it wasn't quite like that, and it was actually the opposite. I mean, there was a lot of civilization, but then we turned down this one road that took us to the Grand Canyon. And guys, let me tell you, I thought it was it for me. We were driving through. It was like a mobile home park. And Jeff, this is not like the mobile home park we see there in Burke County. This one was even scarier because it was like a bunch of Native Americans, and I was waiting for them to get scalped, and I don't have a lot of hair left. So, but man, we drove through there, and then Chris, I immediately thought about you because after making it through this this Native American trailer park, we ended up into this it was a tree farm, and it wasn't just any tree, Chris. It was the Joshua tree of all things. Some of our other podcasts in the back. It was a whole bunch of Joshua trees, and I'm driving. I'm like, that's some funky looking trees. And my wife goes, those are Joshua trees. And I immediately thought of Chris because that was like we done a podcast a few months ago about favorite albums. And Chris had mentioned the Joshua tree by U2. So I thought, so I immediately thought of you. And if I hadn't have been driving, I would have taken a picture of the tree and sent it to you. But unfortunately, I was driving and trying to keep up with my friend that was driving 100 miles an hour. So, but that was fun. Geez. And then of course we finally made it out to the Grand Canyon. Now, the ride to the Grand Canyon was nice. It was about 75 degrees. But coming back home, like they say, it drops about 25 degrees out there in the desert. And let me tell y'all what, we're driving this vehicle that has no air, no heat, no windows, no doors, no roof. And I am bundled up. I got my mask on. I got a toboggan. I got a hoodie. I got a big winter coat. And it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I was still wearing my sunglasses just to keep the wind off my eyes. And but it was still fun. I mean, 2.5 hours though in the freezing cold. Once we got back to Vegas, I hit the showers, warmed up, and then I went down to the casino and won about $450 all by just putting down. I was playing. It's kind of like beginner's luck. I was hanging out with my buddies, and they were playing Texas Hold'em, and I know nothing about cards.
Oh, boy.
Nothing about cards, right? And so I'm like, how do I play this game? So my friend goes, just put $40 down, and I'll do the rest. So I put in $40, and every time I'd win a hand, which was pretty often, I would just take the chips and put them in my pocket. And then finally, the dealer goes, "Hey, can you put them chips back up on the table so we can cash them out? Because I'm out of chips." And then when I counted up, I had $450. So I was excited about that. And then they switched dealers, and when they did, I said, "Well, look at the time. It's time me to go back up to the room." So I was a smart gambler. I stopped after that and took my $450, and then the next day my wife spent it at one of the stores. So easy come, easy go, either way you go, you know. And then the last thing I'll tell you guys about is on the Vegas Strip, the same day or the next day when I returned the Slingshots, they have another little vehicle out there that you can rent called a Vanderhall, and it's also made similar to the Slingshot. It has two wheels in the front and one in the back, and but the seats are extremely close together. It's like a riding a freaking go-kart, man. It was down on the ground, but it got a lot of looks. I had people taking my picture and screaming, "Hey, I like your vehicle, man!" And so that was kind of cool. And then I drove that over to the world famous pawn shop, as seen on the TV show Pawn Stars, and went in there. And lo and behold, can y'all believe it? They were asking me for my autograph. I don't know what I thought they were the stars, but I guess I was. No, I'm just joking there, but I am teasing. But they did have some kind of cool stuff in there. But they wasn't filming, so none of the stars were there. But it was kind of cool to walk in there and see the place. It looks exactly like it does on television. Nothing different. And but they had a lot of stuff in there. And when I say this, Jeff and Chris will know what I'm talking about. But it was a lot like pro wrestling gimmicks in there. You go in there and you see the stuff and you're like, oh, that's a gimmick. And that place was full of them, but it was neat. It was neat to do. And I will be flying home back to Charlotte tomorrow. I mean, this is my last night here. So after the podcast, I'm going to go down and hit up Caesar's Palace and get me a nice meal and get ready for my midnight red-eye flight back to Charlotte. But I know I kind of sounded long-winded. But as we get back to our podcast and talking about, in January, we were doing our series on world-class championship wrestling. And, of course, I got sick and we wasn't able to finish up that series. So I want to kind of touch on that tonight about the one thing that made world-class championship wrestling work and be successful. And it's got to be, Jeff and Chris, I think you guys both will agree on this, but it was the Von Erich Freebird feud.
Yeah, I'll let Jeff go first on this one.
I totally agree on that. I mean, man, the Von Erichs were they were like the Beatles in Texas during the 80s, man. I mean, they were unreal and so over. And then, of course, the Freebirds. I mean, what do you say? I mean, Michael Hayes, who could talk, Terry Gordy, who could go toe to toe with anybody, one of the toughest guys in the wrestling business. And then you got Buddy Jack Roberts, who was a great performer. So I mean, you got with the Von Erichs, who like I said, were over like the Beatles were in the 60s or 50s or whenever. But yeah, they were. It was great, a great feud.
Yeah, I think looking back over the actual feud between the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, it all started in 1982 when Ric Flair was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and he came into Dallas to defend the title against Kerry Von Erich, and Terry Gordy was the keeper of the cage, and Michael Hayes was the special guest enforcer referee. during this match, Michael Hayes was trying to help Kerry Von Erich win the world title, and Kerry wasn't having none of it, and he refused to cover Ric Flair after Michael Hayes had hit him, and then that provoked Michael Hayes and Kerry Von Erich to kind of get into a little not an altercation, but they were having an exchange of words. And while Michael Hayes' back was turned, Ric Flair came from behind and gave Kerry Von Erich the knee to the back, which knocked Kerry into Michael, knocking Michael out of the cage. And Michael thought that Kerry Von Erich done that on purpose. And then Terry Gordy slams the cage on the Kerry Von Erich's head. And that's pretty much where the Von Erich Freebird feud started. And man, it went hot. They done so much, but I think the one match that they done that really stands out to me was the Bad Street 6-man match there in at the Cotton Bowl there in Dallas, Texas. When it was the Freebirds were the world-class 6-man tag team champions, and they defended against Mike Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich, and Fritz Von Erich. And man, in that match, guys, if you go back and watch it, when Fritz Von Erich, who was about 70 years old at the time probably, put the claw on Michael Hayes, and that place went nuts. That right there really told you it wasn't just one Von Erich that was over. The whole stinking family was over.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the storyline itself, it caught, in my opinion, it caught everyone off guard. Because, you had Kerry Von Erich getting in the cage with Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And then I don't think anyone walking in the building that night would have thought there's going to be a gigantic explosion between the Von Erichs and the Freebirds by the end of that night. And
right.
It worked. It worked at that time for television to where world-class championship wrestling was. And for even Ric Flair to get in the ring and for all that to take place and the world title on the line. And it was going to put world class in a different class. And really, in reading this and even growing up watching this, it was kind of like the Southern feud between Georgia and Texas and the Southern Belle. And it was just like the Freebirds were like just an enemy territory in the state of Texas, pretty much.
Yeah. And
at any one time.
Yeah. And Chris, it's funny you say that. I've got a clip I'm going to play of a little small promo with Kevin Von Erich as he's explaining the Freebird Von Erich feud, and let's go to it right now.
Hey, Freebirds, you listen to me and you listen good. You've got everybody in the world believing that this is a war between Texas and Georgia, and I had relatives that died under the Southern flag, and I'll tell you right now, this war is not between Texas and Georgia. It's between decency and filth.
Right there, man. That promo right there was from 1985, and it still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, Kevin Von Erich was great on the mic. He was a great performer. And we had talked about it before, how, David was probably the best of all of them. And then, of course, he passed away. And then definitely the second one would have to be Kevin as far as in-ring work. And, man, he could talk, too. He definitely lit the fire. You could hear the fans while he was doing the promo cheering him on. So yeah, great wrestler, great feud all together.
I believe if Kevin Von Erich had the physique of Kerry Von Erich, he would have been a tremendous star, for anybody. For Crockett, Vince McMahon, for them all. Because like you said, Kevin, he had it all. He could work. He could talk. He just wasn't as big as Kerry, and didn't have that $1 million body. Not saying he didn't have a great physique. He did, but it wasn't. During the 80s, they were looking for the really big, muscled up guys, and he wasn't. He wasn't that, but he was a heck of a worker. Now, on the flip side, I have a promo now with the Freebirds, talking about the Von Erichs.
And here they go. All these Texans are starting to blame stuff on me, man. I can't help it if some Texan come along and didn't like Kevin Von Erich's looks and beat the tar out of it, man. Don't come blaming stuff like that on me. You make me feel like a big bully.
Well, all right. That's just what I heard. Now, Michael, let's look at what happened earlier this week in that match of the six-man world tag team.
Something better like what's on the screen now.
Well, we can all admire that, but let's go back to this six-man world tag team.
That we won.
Well, yes, but
like how about
by a default. All right. But look at what happened to Buddy Rock.
Hey, well, look, he's holding his trunks. Look, he's holding his trunks, right? Manning, of course, is doing nothing about it. He's cheating right there. It's live. It's on TV in front of another turn-away sellout crowd, which we've done from one side of the world to the... And look at this. 4-on-3. Here comes an idiot. Hey, he probably slipped looking in the mirror or something, and he's going nuts. Look, he doesn't even like his brothers. Nobody likes him. Hey, what are you going to do? You going to blame us for everything? You going to blame us when you don't get the check that you wanted from your employer? You going to blame us when your wife has a headache at night? You going to blame us when she wakes up in the morning, she looks bad because your kid's nose is running? You want to blame us for anything, it's because you, and when I say you, I mean the Von Erichs, can't handle us. Brother Buddy had to take the load by himself, but the Bad Street Bunch is back, stone cold sober as a matter of fact.
All right, now, Buddy, why didn't you wrestle David Von Erich in this event?
Hey, what are you, cop? Hey, what do you mean,
why?
Why?
Did you send Terry Gordy in?
Why did I send Terry? Hey, Terry Gordy was psyched up for the night.
All right, let's look at that one from last week then. When you were supposed to wrestle Kevin, David was coming up, and you took off all these boots. What's this all about?
Well, this is called, hey, how you doing?
That's not extremely kosher, is it? That's pretty bad.
Hey, Bad Street, brother. That's how we was raised, and that's how we're going to go down if ever that situation to arise. You see, this is a money matter.
You defend that sort of action, for crying out loud?
Hey, I'm proud of it, man. I'll be proud the day that I die that somebody says I was one of the fabulous Freebirds, because I'm one of the people. I'm one of three guys that are not only a world champion, man. I'm somebody that fights for my dollar.
What about Mike coming up here and cleaning out everybody?
He didn't clean out everybody. David Manning said...
Three?
What you can't hear here, David Manning said he'd suspend us if we didn't leave the ring.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's what, not because of some punk kid running around with the boot. He doesn't even know what to do with it.
Well, it looks like he did a pretty good job right there on Buddy Roberts.
Looks like this, man, coming up from the back. Well, you'll get your chance in just a few minutes, brother. We'll see what he does to Buddy head up.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate your coming down and giving your explanation.
This is a real nice suit. I've been meaning to tell you. Wear it another 10 years and might come in style.
All right. I like yours, too.
Now, that right there is a classic promo. Michael Hayes was talking junk, and then whenever Bill Mercer had something to come back at him, why are you leaving? Well, what you couldn't hear was the fact David Manning said if we didn't leave, he's going to suspend us. I mean, that right there is what is missing in pro wrestling today. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I mean, it's all scripted now. I mean, they script everything, and I mean, it's ruined the wrestling business. I saw a podcast with Steve Austin, and he said the exact same thing. You know, they've taken the wrestlers have no personality anymore. They're not allowed to have personality. They're not how, you know what I'm saying? And that's why wrestling's ruined. They can't be themselves anymore. And you know, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with Jeff. Everything's got to be scripted. It's got to be said at this way, at this time, at this juncture, however you want to put it. I mean, when you heard Terry Von Erich speaking, he was speaking from the heart. He was speaking with emotion. If you saw that first line he put out, the crowd went crazy. It didn't even matter what he was saying.
No.
And the Freebirds, they were just adding gasoline to the fire. That's all that was. That whole interview was gasoline to the fire, just to get the fans riled up and to continue the storyline outside of the ring. And you just don't see that today.
No, you don't.
And Tony, real quick, I want to go to the, I hate to point fingers, but Vince McMahon started the scripting crap. You know, I mean, and I was listening to Arn Anderson's podcast, and he said when he and Tully Blanchard first went to the WWF, none of their promos, they came up with. Everything was scripted. We're talking about 1988 when they went to the WWF. It was scripted then. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And now it's like, I remember a couple of times I had worked for a promoter in the early 2000s, and he done that to me. I got there and he gave me this script, and he's like, this is what you're going to say. I'm like, no, I'm not. Because this isn't anything I would say. This isn't my gimmick. This isn't how I talk. And he's like, well, I'm trying to do things like the WWF. And I said, why? Because nobody wants to watch the WWF right now. People want to see old classic wrestling, and you hand somebody a script and you give me 10 minutes to memorize all this stuff. No, you tell me what, I said, you give me an idea of what you want to be said, and I'll put it in my own words. But I'm not going to come out there and say all this stupid stuff, because that ain't me. That ain't how I talk, and I'd forget half of it, and I'd stutter most of it. So I'm not going to do that. And he's like, okay, and then he come to me and says, well, tonight on your tag match, I want you guys to go 5 minutes. And I guess he was trying to spank me because I wouldn't do his script. So I said, okay, we'll go 5 minutes. Well, it took me 5 minutes just to get my ring jacket off. And then, I went another 15. And then the best part about it, our match went total 25 minutes counting our entrance. And when I got back to the dressing room, as I was walking through that locker room from the ring, his wrestlers were lined up at the door telling us thank you, saying that's the best freaking match that they've seen in that area since they've been coming there, and they want to know, where did we come from, and I'm like, well, old school is where I come from, and and I'll never forget, I'm doing this match, and I look at the referee, which is a good friend of mine and Jeff's, Rodney Hildebrand, and I say, Rodney, how much time we got? And his words were, who cares? This is the best shit I've ever seen. So we just kept going, and we kept doing our 1980 spots, same spots that Jeff and I ran for years, and man, the crowd was eating it up, and they were trying to do this crap, this ECW extreme crap, and all this scripted stuff, and nobody cared about it, but they definitely cared about us, and then me and my guys were getting over so much, he wanted to split us up and put us with different people. And I said, nah, we're not going to do that. So we actually quit going. But you guys are right. That's the problem with today's product, is the fact that too much stuff is scripted. Nothing's from the heart anymore. And that's why I can't remember what podcast it was, but I remember watching the podcast a couple of days ago, or listening to a podcast a couple of days ago on my way up to Vegas. And in there, they said every wrestler looks alike, acts alike, dresses alike, and when they get in the ring, it doesn't matter which promotion it is, they all are doing the exact same thing. They walk out, they get in the ring, they all do their turnbuckle pose or their middle of the ring pose. In the 80s, guys didn't do that. They got in the ring and they started working, and that's right. And I think that they need to go back to that to get people's attention.
Amen to that. I'm not going to. Absolutely. I mean, it's all about charisma in the ring and work ethic in the ring, and not just the work ethic, but it's the mic skills, it's the body language, it's everything. How you walk to the ring, you start the match, it's how you delay the match, it's everything that plays into that storyline. And these guys were so great just by the amount of house shows that they did, because they had to sell it to the crowd because there were no cameras around. Now today, there's a camera everywhere. Back in the day, you had to work twice as hard to get that reaction, and that's what made them so good of workers, whether they were the favorites, they were the heels, whatever it was, that's what made them, and they had to work that much harder.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I used to like, guys, in the 80s when I'd go to a show, especially a TV taping, like I remember in 1987 when Dusty Rhodes and Tully Blanchard were having their World Television title match and $50,000 in the Greensboro Coliseum, and Dusty and Tully are going all at it, and then JJ steals the money and runs out with it. Well, here in the Coliseum, the only thing we saw is JJ run away. That's all we seen. And then it wasn't for 2 more weeks when it came on television that we saw that Dusty, chased JJ out in the parking lot, and JJ was taken off in the car. And then Dusty comes back in the building, and he screams, Crockett, I want my money, and of course the realism there, Dusty was cussing on the microphone because he was mad because he just had $50,000 stolen from him. And that's what you, Jeff, Chris would do, I would do. If somebody stole $50,000 from me and I knew it was somebody I knew, man, I'm going to get on the microphone and I'm going to be cussing too. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to get a gun and go after him. But that was the realism of it. And now on today's product, there is no realism. It's, of course, I don't even watch it anymore, so I couldn't even really tell you what's going on or what angles are running. But based off of what I see posted on Facebook and social media and stuff, and hearing other guys talk, it's not much to watch. On today's stuff.
Well, here it is. I mean, the reason that the Von Erich and Freebird feud worked is because the people believed it.
Yeah.
They believed there was legitimate heat with those guys. They believed that, and that's what wrestling in the 80s was. It was believable. I know we've talked about it several times, but wrestling back in those days, man, I mean, it was, I thought it was real. I mean, I really did.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I mean, I really thought it was real. And, even if even the kids nowadays, they watch this now and they all know it's fake.
Yeah.
They know it's not believable.
Right.
And when I was their age, I thought wrestling, was real. And it's not anymore. And even when I, my boys watch some of the old stuff, they look at me and said, my God, they're trying to kill each other. I said, yeah, because back then wrestling was believable. It's not believable anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Now it's like a television show. It's like a, you like watch a Marvel movie, and that's kind of like what wrestling is now. And I've been seeing this thing where the WWE has sold the rights to their WWE network to NBC. So now that they're doing that, what's next? Are they going to sell the company to them? I mean, the wrestling industry is in such dire straits right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and think about it, guys. I mean, how many stories have we heard of back in the 70s and 80s where fans attacked the heels?
Oh, yeah.
How many stories have we heard? I mean, I saw, Roddy Piper, and he said it's been over 20, 30 times that a fan has attacked him. I mean, so, that stuff don't happen anymore. It's because it's not believable.
Yeah.
I mean, And if I could just say this, kudos, really, when you think about the feud, the kudos has got to go to the Freebirds. I mean, because the Von Erichs really didn't have to do anything.
No.
It's all on Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, Bam Bam Gordy, and Buddy Roberts. And that's what sold the tickets. The Von Erichs just showed up, and we're gonna have a tassel tonight in Texas in some God-known city on some God-known night, and it's going to be on. And that's really what it was in when you peel back all the layers of the onion.
Yeah, and also if you go back to World Class and you look at who all in that territory worked with the Von Erichs and who drew the most money, I'll give you two names. Okay, number one was the Freebirds. The Freebirds definitely drew more money with the Von Erichs than probably anybody ever drew with the Von Erichs. And I would say second place would go to Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams. After that, anybody else that feuded with the Von Erichs, it was kind of watered down. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Totally.
I mean,
how are you going to top it? It's just like,
yeah. I mean, for
what's
one,
the next best idea?
Right.
I don't know.
For one, like the Von Erichs and Freebirds, that feud, it went a couple of years and it stayed red hot the whole time. Then the Freebirds left. They go to AWA, and so now Fritz has got to find somebody else that can feud with the Von Erichs. And then he put together Gino Hernandez, Chris Adams, and Jake the Snake Roberts with Nicola, and that one drew a lot of money. Not like the Freebirds by any means, but it was close. And I'll never forget the match they had there at Reunion Arena. I'm sorry, not Reunion Arena, at the Cowboy Stadium. Whenever they have who was the Von Erichs against Chris Adams, Gino Hernandez, and whoever won the match got these two brand new Lincoln Continentals, and of course the Freebirds win, and then Gino and Chris go down there with chains and bust the windshields out of them. And back then it was like, oh my God, that was believable, and like I said, that goes back to what's missing in the wrestling industry now is the angles to make it believable. Like that could really happen. You get in the ring and you do 10,000 flips in an everyday fight. That ain't gonna happen because you flip one time, I'm gonna knock you on your head. But
right.
But it's so much different now. But definitely finishing up that series, Von Erichs and Freebirds were definitely what made World Class Championship Wrestling thrive and survive several years, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. No squabble there. I mean, it was a great time for professional wrestling. It really was. It was, if there's one, it did get on the national scale to an extent, but God almighty, if it ever happened, that war in the NWA or even the WWF, not so much the WWF, but if in the NWA, good Lord, what could have happened there? I mean, it was a great time, and I enjoyed watching it and watch it play out from afar up in the Northeast because it was something different that I didn't see each and every week in professional wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was good stuff. World Class was definitely, if I was rating back in the 80s, my top, the top four organizations, and I'm talking about the NWA, the WWF, World Class, and AWA, my favorites would be in this order. It would be the NWA would be number one for me, World Class would be number two, WWF would be number three, and then AWA would be number four. And that's kind of, and when you look at that, the way I rated it based off of the angles and the storylines that for me that made me go, oh my God, this is real. in the 80s, man, everything was believable, most everything, until about 87, whenever the WWF decided to start having these over-the-top gimmicks. That's when I started going, is wrestling really okay? NWA is real, but that WWF stuff, that's crazy. That's fake, because those guys are dressed like cartoon characters. And that's kind of how I looked at it. I'm sure that's probably how you guys looked at it as well, right?
Yep, definitely.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, one last thing I want to touch on this podcast is, since I am out here in Vegas, I have been out driving around trying to find some of the spots I was looking for. Speaking of the AWA, I was looking for the infamous Showboat Sports Pavilion in downtown Las Vegas, as Rod Trongard used to always say. But what I did find out was the place where I rented my Slingshot. That casino, the Showboat Sports Arena, was directly across the street where I rented my Slingshot. Unfortunately, that it was torn down several years ago, and now they have built apartment complexes on the property. But it's still called the Showboat. It's called the Showboat Sports apartment complex, and they have apartments and condos out there now. But it was still cool, to say, hey, I was here at the property where it was at, and that was one of the places where the AWA held shows, and the other place was at the Tropicana. And for many years, the AWA held their television tapings in their home base of Minneapolis for their syndicated All-Star Wrestling program, and the WTCN television studios. However, in 1985, the AWA promoter Vern Gagne made the decision to hold some television tapings at the Tropicana Hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey. But whenever Greg Gagne decided to make a deal with ESPN later in that same year, they decided to move all the tapings permanently to Las Vegas, and they would hold it there at the Showboat Sports Pavilion in downtown Las Vegas. There was a lot of matches that came from that era. And we're going to take a quick break, and we could come back. Jeff, Chris, and myself are going to talk about our favorite match from the Showboat Sports Pavilion in downtown Las Vegas. Coming up next on the Binge Buster Show.
AWA Championship Wrestling. The AWA presents the greatest stars in professional wrestling, bringing you the best in mat action.
All right, fans, welcome back to the Binge Buster Show. Talking about AWA Championship Wrestling from Las Vegas, Nevada. Guys, from like 86 to like 89, that was probably the best years for me for the AWA. I know they had a few things in 85 that was okay, but going back to my favorite match, it would have to be, it came from the Las Vegas Showboat Sports Arena. It was for the AWA World Tag Team titles. The Rockers taking on Doug Summers and I just lost my train of thought. His partner,
Buddy Rose.
Buddy Rose and Doug Summers.
Buddy Rose.
Yes, yeah. And that was a bloodbath. That was probably one of the bloodiest matches, if not the bloodiest match I ever saw on the AWA taping. Man, that match was just crazy. And it took place right there at the Showboat Sports Pavilion. Jeff, what was one of your favorite AWA matches?
I would say it would have to be, was it Nick Bockwinkel against Kurt Hennig?
Yes.
When for the AWA World Title, whenever Larry Zbyszko, Kurt turned heel. Larry Zbyszko gave him a roll of coins, and he knocked Bockwinkel out and won the title. Very
Yes.
controversial.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that was a great one. And you didn't see that coming. I mean, because up until then,
Yeah.
Kurt Hennig was just like a mid-carder. He was, he had teamed with Scott Hall. They were the AWA Tag Team Champions, but he was a big-time babyface. And he was kind of put in that limelight of, okay, he's friends with Gagne's son, so he's there, but he's not a main event guy. But when he won the world title and become cool Kurt Hennig, man, that right there was what I think was the start of his tremendous career.
Yeah, he was, he was a better heel than babyface, no doubt about it.
For sure. Chris, what about you? What was your favorite standout AWA match?
I'm gonna go early on, Tony Jeff. I mean, I'm gonna go early on. I'm gonna go 1986 because what really drew me to the Showboat Sports Pavilion was a 6-man tag team match with. Really, it was Sherry Martel, Larry Zbyszko, and Colonel De Beers taking on Kurt Hennig, Greg Gagne, and Jimmy the Superfly Snuka.
Oh, yeah.
And really, it was Snuka's kind of somewhat defection from the WWF at that time where I had so much exposure to Jimmy Snuka, the cage matches at Madison Square Garden, coming to my local hometown to WrestleMania, and that's what really drew me. I was like, okay, Jimmy Snuka is wrestling somewhere, different than the WWF, and we know he did his NWA days prior to that, but that was kind of somewhat semi-big news a little bit back then in the mid-'80s.
Yeah,
as well, and obviously Snuka was let go. Had a lot of out of the ring problems, but that's what really drew me to it because I knew who he was, and my first real exposure to the AWA as well, coming again from the Northeast, cable TV just coming really into play nationwide. I mean, in all reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it was, it was starting to become mainstream, and you started to notice guys going from one territory to another. It seemed like everybody was trying to go to WWF, but during that time, Vince was going with the bigger guys. The guys that were larger than life, and certainly Hulk Hogan. Big John Studd, Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, those type of guys were the ones getting booked up north, so to speak. And the mid-carder guys like Jimmy Snuka and Rick Martel, those guys were doing better business elsewhere, like the AWA or the NWA or Texas or Florida. So you had that. And of course, on next week's podcast, we're going to kind of stay with some AWA. For a couple of years now, we've been doing a lot of Mid Atlantic and Crockett Promotions. So for the month of the rest of the month of February and part of March, we're going to be touching base on some of the big events from the AWA. So next week's podcast, guys, I'll be back home in North Carolina. But we will be talking AWA Super Clash 2 that took place on May the 2nd, 1987 at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, California. And a lot of great matches on that card. Of course, the big match on that card was Jimmy Snuka and Russ Francis taking on the Terrorist and the Mercenary, and of course the Midnight Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty taking on Ray Stevens and Buddy Wolf, and Doug Summers and Kevin Kelly were there in a 6-man. It's a 6-man tag There's the Rockers and Ray Stevens taking on Buddy Wolf, Doug Summers, and Kevin Kelly. And then, of course, that was the big one where we just talked about it. Kurt Hennig defeats Nick Bockwinkel to become the AWA World Heavyweight Champion. That happened at Super Clash 2, and we will be covering that next week here on the Binge Buster Show. Guys, you guys have any parting words before we go off the air tonight?
I mean, I think Jeff knows where I'm coming from, and probably Tony as well. Hey, listen, no matter what we talk on here week after week and here and there, it was a great time to be a professional wrestling fan. No matter what you were watching, what you were doing, who you were cheering for or booing or whatever it may be, it was a great time for professional wrestling and a great time for World Class and for the AWA as well, who capitalized on cable TV too. So it was a great time and a great time to see a different variety and widespread of wrestling talent really throughout the United States.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely can't wait to talk Super Clash 2. And then, of course, in the coming weeks, we'll be talking more Super Clash. I know there were a lot of those that took place in the 80s. The first one was in 85. The last one was in 1990. And probably the most popular one would have been Super Clash 3, where Jerry Lawler and Kerry Von Erich wrestled to determine the undisputed unified world heavyweight champion. I can't wait to cover that show. As during 1988, that was right after the big sale of Crockett promotion, so a lot of Jim Crockett guys are on that card as well. So we'll be getting into that the next couple of weeks. Jeff, you have any parting words before we go off the air tonight?
I think Chris summed it up. I know when I got cable, I guess it was 1986 when cable came out to where I was living at the time. Anytime wrestling was on TV, I was watching. Didn't matter what kind of wrestling it was. And there was so many different territories. Georgia Championship Wrestling they were kind of toward the end of their thing. Then you had, the Crockett's and what they were doing. WWF, I could finally watch WWF on TV. AWA, World Class was coming on. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun to be a teenager growing up in those times where there was always wrestling on the tube. Yeah.
And same for me, and back then, you had to search to find the wrestling because a lot of times it wasn't advertised. And of course, cable, like you said, cable was new. So we all, everybody, or at least I know as a kid, I didn't know all the channels. So I'd have to turn but man, once I found out that, AWA came on ESPN and at 4:00 in the afternoon every day. And then I found the USA Network with the WWF, and then I found WTBS with NWA and Georgia Championship Wrestling. I was hooked, and the rest is history, so to speak. So, but in either event, guys, I'm glad to be back on the air with you guys after this 2 or 3 weeks off, and I can't wait to get back to North Carolina. I know today they were calling for a little ice there. Hopefully. You guys are good there and no ice and I can't wait to get back home and get back to our podcast or weekly podcast. And next week we'll be talking AWA Super Clash 2. Guys, for Jeff and Chris, I'm Tony. Thanks for joining us on the Binge Buster Show. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Binge Buster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.